This was Melina Abdullah, who is running for the vice presidency of the United States on Cornel West's ticket. And I ask every presidential candidate, I ask every politician how they feel about reparations, what their position is on reparations. And then I ask them, what does reparations look like and who's it for? I'm gonna play a little bit for what she said, because she said a couple of interesting things that I want you to hear. There are people who say that check should be for all Black people here because we're all impacted by the legacy of slavery and white supremacy, more specifically. Other people say it should only be for the descendants of American slavery. What do you say?
I say I don't understand why Black people are trying to block other Black people, right? I say I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I think it's an extremely narrow view to act as if Black people from the Caribbean weren't enslaved. It means that they should take a comparative slavery class so they understand. It means that they don't understand what was lost by continental Africans when our foremothers and forefathers were taken from villages, right? And so I believe that we shouldn't be trying to say this is who should get reparations. We should say all Black people get reparations. And I am a Pan-Africanist, and I know that makes some of the people in certain groups angry.
Oh yeah,
very angry.
I have Yvette Carnell coming on, I believe, on Friday night. We're going to have a conversation, a special episode of Office Hours. And I know what she would say to you, I believe, and I don't want to speak for Yvette, but I think what she would say is Caribbean Americans do deserve reparations, and CARICOM is for them. They have their justice claim somewhere else. But the people here in the United States are Black people who are descendants of slaves, and they exclusively deserve it because they're the ones who built this country. And that's not divisive. That's just the targeted justice claim. And she would probably push back against your Pan-Africanism. That doesn't bother you too much.
No, it doesn't bother me at all. And I think that what kind of people are we when we trying to block other people from getting, who are our people, other people who are our people, from getting what they are also due?
First of all, I'm confident that I represented your position properly, which is actually my position as well. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you addressed the CARICOM part, so but she said some other things that I know you want to respond to, that I know you have thoughts about, from Pan-Africanism to the also why are you blocking? Because there are people who say we could make a global movement here if we embrace a different vision. But feel free to respond any way you want.
Let me just first of all say I support Dr. Cornel West. I love him for everything he's done for his people. And I think he has a love for all of his people, which is something that's rare. So I support him 100%. But let me just say that I think that she gave you an unserious answer, right? Because every other group decides who are our people, and it doesn't include every Black person in the world. Right? There is, and the Supreme Court has told us, listen, you have to tie this back to a specific harm. They've been very clear that, like, in terms of redress, they have narrowed redress even more. They have said you cannot do it. And when you saw SCOTUS come back with that affirmative action ruling, they said you can't just say diversity, right? You have to prove a harm. And they even brought up, I can't remember which justice it was, said, listen, you cannot compare a Nigerian who is affluent. You cannot compare that person to a Southern Black American. This is the Supreme Court telling you we're not doing this. So the problem for me, one of the problems for me, is how hard-headed Pan-Africanists are. I believe that Pan-Africanism has become a religion as opposed to a kind of any kind of political outlook that has any kind of proof of concept. And I believe the person that is blocking reparations for ADOS are people like her, who are saying, regardless of what the Supreme Court is telling me, regardless of what makes sense, everything has to have a criteria. Like, you don't walk into something and say, it's for everybody. No, even when you have a lawsuit, you say, who was harmed? Who was in the car? You don't say, well, everybody else was harmed in some kind of way by traffic, right? That's not the kind of conversation we're having. And so for me, for her, like, I honestly feel like Pan-Africans are holding the reparations for ADOS hostage, because you walk around now, you see Ron Daniels and local reparations, and he's saying it has to be for all Black people. And everybody is telling you that does not make sense. Even other countries are telling you that, like, what you're doing does not make any sense. So And let me just push back a little bit on our people. All Africans are not my people in the sense of, it's interesting to me. You can go to Africa and they'll have, it's 54 countries, hundreds and hundreds of tribes, right? Like they don't even have unity on the continent, but you are willing to stand in the way of my reparations in order for me to have some type of connectivity and relationship to people that I don't have a relationship with. That's the same as telling me I should have a relationship with somebody from Ecuador or somebody from Yugoslavia. Listen, these are separate countries. A lot of these countries don't even have good relationships. A lot of tribes don't have good relationships. So the idea that, and when you talk about Black Americans, we're still 90%. So you're telling us unless we do something for people who got here either in 1965 or after 2000, you don't want to do anything. To me, that is an ideologue. To me, that is somebody who is an ideologue and who is standing in the way of reparations for ADOS out of the fact that they wore a RBG flag and they had an UNC or whatever they had in high school. And I just think some of this is just stuff you have to outgrow this. You have to outgrow this. We are Americans. And we have been in America longer than anybody. We are more American than apple pie. We were American before America was a country, and people are still telling me I'm African. Every justice claim around Africa, every justice claim in the Caribbean is based on a specific harm, and they have specific countries that they're going after. Our specific country is America, and we tie that harm back to slavery. Other people are not included, and I don't have to split that with you just because we both may have melanin or kinky hair or have some African descent. That's not a good enough criteria. That's not a harm. You benefited from coming to America. We built America. We're not the same.
How do we, and you may say we don't need to do this, how do we hold on to that singular justice claim, that specific justice claim, while still not disconnecting from our brothers and sisters around the globe? In other words, because you're not, like you said, you have an affinity for people in different countries, different places, and many of us have made decisions to say, for strategic reasons, we call strategic essentialism, right? We're going to talk about the ways that African people around the globe are connected, our cultural connections, our spiritual connections, our historical connections, right? And there's also, again, a way that there are some common enemies, some common foes, some common systems and structures that are just anti-Black. That's not to discredit the point you're making. I'm saying, can we do both? And can we, on the one hand, say we're fighting for reparations for ADOS, to use your language, but we still want to foster relationships around the globe? Is it possible to do those things as a practical matter?
No, because Pan-Africans don't have a proof of concept. Right. We haven't done enough. We are wealthless and falling off a cliff. We haven't done anything for ourselves. So asking me that is not about whether or not I have affection for people. I do. But asking me that is like asking me if I'm drowning, is there a way that I can pull up 10 more people with me? Right. Is there a way to pull up to with my one vest to pull these people up? No, you have to be able to do what you have to do in your corner of the world. Now, if ADOS get reparations, I'll be the first one to go on tour and talk about it and talk strategy. But right now, I think what happens when you don't do that is you have a group of people who are scattered and unfocused. So when I'm not trying to take shots at Ron Daniels, but it's easy. Because this is this biggest thing that he's tried to wrestle away from ADOS, right? In terms of he wants to do the reparations project. Well, now he's saying now he's writing articles about barbecue in Haiti. What happens is that you're not going to do either of those things well. You're going to be, what do they call it, a master of none. You're not going to do that thing well. You have to fight for the people that you have to fight for, right? You have to be able to fight in your corner of the world, and you have to win. I sometimes think that it's an easy dodge for people to say, well, I'm fighting for all people. Well, then you don't have to prove that you actually win anything. Then you don't have to prove that you're actually good at what you do. You can just go around with a bullhorn and say, I'm fighting for everybody. But like when you say I'm fighting for these specific things in America, when you say I'm fighting for these specific outcomes, okay, we can put a metric up and let's see how we do it. Because what we have always been as ADOS is we are a beacon to the world. And people feel like if we win reparations here, I think you will see a domino effect around the world. But we can't do that by saying, well, we're going to include everybody. That's never going to happen. And it doesn't make sense for it to happen.